Culture shock. Noun. The feeling of disorientation experienced by someone who is suddenly subjected to an unfamiliar culture, way of life, or set of attitudes. When you hear the words culture shock, you are probably thinking about people moving to a new country thousands of miles away as an immigrant, or for college, or for simply tourism, being amongst new people, learning a new language, and observing new traditions. It feels like a roller coaster ride of emotions and adjustments in lifestyle, coupled with fear, anxiety, happiness, and excitement all put together. You're probably thinking, nice, but how does this relate to me unless I'm planning to move to, I don't know, Madagascar, or if I'm going to study abroad in, say, Croatia, or embark on this mission to explore the rainforests of the Amazon? Of course it does. What if I tell you that each and every one of you has been going through those very symptoms that culture shock harbors, and that too without even stepping out of your own homes? I would like to bring to your attention this new kind of culture shock, which has been prevalent off late, and I would like to call it the COVID culture shock. Now, let's rewind to around the same time last year. Some of you had probably already made plans for spring break. Some of you might have been grinding for those March SATs. Several others were planning their Sweet 16s. Some were beginning to take driving lessons, and well, I can just go on and on and on. Spring was in the air, and it was just the perfect time to start envisioning what warmer weather and brighter days would feel like. And then this crisis hit us. This was not something that was restricted by age, race, color, or socioeconomic status, or any of the isms that exist in our world. But it was a universal crisis that COVID-19 had brought upon us. We had heard about the sickness that had slowly started crippling life in Asia and Europe, and then pretty soon we realized that it was hitting us too. Suddenly, we had to apply the brakes on our plans, meetings, parties, vacations, school, work, and that pretty much felt like putting a stop on life itself. Coronavirus, social distancing, flatten the curve, quarantine, isolation, community spread, herd immunity, pandemic, vaccine, essential worker, telemedicine, disinfectant, Clorox, hand sanitizer, face mask, lockdown, remote, virtual, video call, Google Meet, WebEx, Zoom. I think I'm out of breath, but these have become our buzzwords this past year. We cannot have a normal conversation without incorporating at least a couple of these words. If you don't think that this is a big change in all our lives, then what is? This, my friends, is the COVID culture shock. So now I'm going to pull up something for you to visualize. Let's travel back in time to the mid-1950s, which was when the term culture shock was officially coined by a Canadian anthropologist named Kalervo Oberg. When Oberg coined this term, he also came up with his U-shaped continuum. This model highlights the four main stages of traditional culture shock. These stages are the honeymoon stage, the frustration stage, the adjustment stage, and lastly, the acceptance stage. While individuals experience these stages differently and the impact and order of each stage varies widely, they do provide a guideline of how we adapt and cope with culture shock. Let me now connect this model to our COVID culture shock and walk you through my insights of the different stages. These insights apply specifically to experiences of someone going to school. Let us begin with the honeymoon stage. I recall it started on Friday the 13th last March when our school had a half day, and starting soon, we were going to be having remote schooling. That message from our school superintendent is still etched in my brains. That weekend, I'm sure a lot of us had started making plans and set the stage for this newly found freedom of waking up later than usual and going to school, staying in your pajamas right from your bed. This lazy and laid-back lifestyle was welcoming, with, of course, an abundance of snacks right at your disposal, right in the comfort of your room. Most of the day was free, resulting in us spending our time binge-watching Netflix shows, scrolling endlessly through TikTok and whatever other social media platforms, reading, or just sleeping in bed. Of course, we had begun to realize that the least that was expected of us was to be socially distanced and just wear a mask. More wonderful news poured in a few weeks later. No final exams. It was just the icing on a cake. We were reveling in the time. It felt like an early vacation. It was like a honeymoon indeed. However, more restrictions came in that prevented us from going to people's houses or even eating at restaurants. Soon, school was done with no fun year-end events, and the summer of 2020 kicked in. With that, slowly but surely, the frustration stage seeped in as well. Vacation travel was canceled, more rigid social distancing rules, no activities, Zoom birthdays, Zoom graduations, Zoom weddings, Zoom here, Zoom there, Zoom everywhere. Zoom fatigue crept in with everything happening virtually and so little human interaction with no end in sight. The beautiful summer days were going by with very little social engagements. This simply meant more and more forced family time. As much as this period seemed like a lot of fun at first, I was losing it. Sleeping at odd hours and doing nothing worthwhile made me feel like a zombie. What was supposed to feel like endless rest and relaxation felt more like an endless maze with no direction. I was confused and so sick of it that one fine day, when my frustration level almost hit the ceiling, I approached my mom. That evening, after hours of deliberation and discussion and weeping and whining, we finally penned some ideas for me to pursue. We explored volunteering, taking a couple courses online, working out to feel fit and energized, and planning some fun family activities. With some tangible and plausible suggestions, I was keen to explore most of the ideas, and within some time, my frustrations slowly started to wither away. I could clearly see myself moving into the adjustment stage. In the adjustment stage, you realize that certain things are not going to change. You also start to realize that this is going to continue for a much longer duration than initially anticipated. You have to start looking at things from a different perspective, like looking at the glass half full rather than half empty. Working out eventually became a habit over the summer. I started looking forward to learning something new through the courses. Even though they were grueling and time compressed, it gave me that deep sense of discipline that I'd terribly lost the past couple months. I felt my brain cells were finally getting recharged. I was learning something new, and you know what? It ended up inspiring me a lot. Volunteering helped me connect with new people, and the rewarding experience gave me a deep sense of gratitude as I was giving back to society. I learned to enjoy the few moments spent outside with friends and family, and the time spent indoors became more intentional and goal-driven with every passing day. As we slowly transitioned to the end of the summer, we realized that schools were not going to be opening in the fall for in-person instruction, and everything was going to be remote. I quickly realized that I had already adjusted pretty well to the remote environment, and I stepped into the acceptance stage as a more confident and optimistic individual. Now, with the realization that you are in it for the long run, it's finally time for acceptance. And this all boils down to the 3 R's: routine, reflection, and relaxation. While being remote provides a lot of flexibility, many are not able to cope with it due to the absence of a well-established routine. Being in person provides that routine, and one should take steps towards recreating that in their home environment. It all starts with maintaining good sleep habits. So now let me tell you a short story. At the start of COVID, when I had the craziest sleep schedule, my dad, being himself, would try to wake me up, with great effort, of course. Every time he would say these 2 words obnoxiously loud: carpe diem, which means seize the day in Latin. I used to get super annoyed and completely dismiss those words, and some days I would also end up throwing a pillow or two at his face in rage. But then, as I delved into the acceptance stage, these words actually started to ring a bell in my head, and I realized how relevant they were. I understood that the time I have is completely in my control. So, take Carpe Diem literally and use it to your advantage by establishing that optimal routine for your days. With your routine in place, you can establish rigor to keep you engaged and to help you stay motivated. The second R, reflection, goes hand in hand with your routine. Talk about your experiences with those who care for you, or jot down bullets in a journal of some sort. One day, when all of this is over and you happen to open your quarantine journal, you will feel good about all that you did and have accomplished during the time. And finally, there's relaxation. Obviously, the most important one to all of us, right? I know that at times it's hard to resist spiraling back into that phase of frustration when you are overwhelmed. It's important to take meaningful brain breaks by exercising or pursuing your hobbies to help get rid of all of the accumulating stress. The acceptance stage shows how, despite the fact that this culture shock might have had such a negative connotation initially, you have found ways to self-develop. You have made these experiences actually count and made them memorable. You may also realize that you have developed a camaraderie within your lifestyle and seem to have comfort with it to such an extent that you might even be a little hesitant to go back. I know I am. Of course, with vaccinations in full swing and COVID rates gradually dropping, the dream of forever remote schooling is soon going to vanish. Several times at this stage, people facing typical culture shock have this urging feeling of wanting to be at both places at the same time. Similarly, several of us probably wish to incorporate elements of both these worlds, the virtual one and the COVID-free social one. And we would like to handpick the pros of each to determine our new post-pandemic lifestyle. With the COVID culture shock having a tremendous impact on us, we wonder, what is in store for us in the foreseeable future? What will the normal now look like? Wouldn't we still want to utilize Zoom for meetings instead of these long, well now unnecessary commutes? Wouldn't we miss staying in PJs all day, every day? And wouldn't we miss so much more? Well, that's for us to discover when we enter what's known as the reverse culture shock, where it starts all over again. Thanks for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.